gets a fair start. And it is Raymond Kerr with a start. It is Ben Johnson with a start. Can Kerr catch him? No! It's Ben Johnson! Ben Johnson does it again! Unbelievable! 9-7-9!
Absolutely incredible!
On September 24th, 1988, at 1:30 in the afternoon, 8 men lined up in Seoul's Olympic Stadium for a race that would define a generation. The crowd was enormous, the tension was unbearable, and everyone in that stadium knew they were about to witness something historic. They just didn't know what kind of history it would be. Ben Johnson crossed the finish line with his right arm raised and his index finger pointing to the sky. 9.79 seconds. A new world record, the fastest a human being had ever run 100 meters. Canada exploded, the stadium erupted, and for approximately 72 hours, Ben Johnson was the most celebrated athlete on earth. Then the lab results came back. And in the space of a single press conference, the greatest sprint performance in Olympic history became the most famous doping scandal the world had ever seen.
Lane 3, the reigning Olympic champion, Carl Lewis.
If you make one mistake in 100 meters, you lose. If you have a bad start, you have 99 yards to be pissed.
But here's what most people never found out. Ben Johnson was not the only one in that race who was cheating. He wasn't even close to the only one. 6 of the 8 finalists would later be implicated in doping scandals. 6. The man who received Johnson's gold medal, Carl Lewis, had tested positive for banned stimulants at the U.S. Olympic trials just months before Seoul and was quietly cleared. The silver medalist, Linford Christie, tested positive for a banned substance at the Seoul Games itself, though that finding was overturned on appeal. This is not a story about one man who cheated. It's a story about a system that was built on cheating and about one man who got sacrificed so the system could pretend it was clean.
Ben Johnson of Canada has been caught taking drugs and is expected to be stripped of his 100 meters gold medal, according to International Olympic Committee sources.
Ben Johnson was born in Falmouth, Jamaica in 1961. He was a slight, unremarkable child, small for his age, with a noticeable stutter that made him shy in crowds. His family emigrated to Canada in 1976, and it was there that he fell under the influence of a track coach named Charlie Francis. Francis was brilliant, obsessive, and completely convinced that the only way to compete at the highest level of international sprinting was to do exactly what everyone else was doing. What everyone else was doing, by the mid-70s, involved anabolic steroids. Under Francis's guidance, Johnson rose steadily through the Canadian sprinting ranks. He won bronze at the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics. He set a world record in Rome in 1987, defeating Carl Lewis in the process.
That year it was all about Ben Johnson versus Carl Lewis.
The rivalry between Johnson and Lewis became the defining athletic storyline of the decade. What the public didn't know was that the rivalry was built on a pharmacological arms race. According to Francis's own testimony at the Dubin inquiry, a Canadian government investigation launched after the Seoul scandal, Johnson had been using anabolic steroids continuously for approximately 7 years by the time he ran in Seoul, his entire professional career. Francis didn't apologize for it. He argued openly and on national television that Johnson had no other choice, that every elite sprinter was doing the same thing, that the drugs weren't the problem. The hypocrisy of the system was. The steroid program wasn't improvised. It was managed by a physician named Dr. Jamie Astafin, who administered a controlled cycle of performance-enhancing drugs calibrated to maximize performance while theoretically managing detection risk.
Tens of thousands of athletes are now tested yearly, and only 2% are proven to be doping. Sounds like success? Well, how many are getting away with it?
The primary substance in Johnson's program was furazabol, not stanozolol. That distinction would become important. The 1988 Olympics had been anticipated for years as the definitive showdown between Johnson and Lewis. Both men had every reason to believe the other was doping. The margins that separated them in training, in competition, in world records, those margins don't exist in the world of natural athletic performance. They both understood what was happening. They simply believed the system would protect them the way it always had. Johnson exploded out of the blocks faster than anyone expected. By 50 meters, he was already clear. By 70 meters, the race was over. He crossed the line, raised his arm, looked back at Lewis, and let the world record speak for itself. 9.79 seconds. The stadium was briefly, completely silent. The kind of silence that only happens when human beings collectively realize they have just witnessed something they don't have the right words for. Then the roar. Canada hadn't won gold in the men's sprint at a Summer Olympics in nearly 60 years. This wasn't just a gold medal. It was a national identity moment. Johnson was on the front page of every newspaper in the country before the ink was dry. 55 hours later, the IOC called a press conference. Johnson had tested positive for stanozolol. Here's where the story gets complicated in ways that have never been fully resolved.
Good evening. The nation is in shock tonight over the downfall of a Canadian hero.
Victor to villain.
The urine sample of Ben Johnson was found to contain the metabolites of a banned substance, namely stanozolol.
Stanozolol was not what Ben Johnson was supposed to be taking. His coach didn't think he was on it. His doctor didn't think he was on it. The program they had built was centered on furazabol, a different steroid, one they believed was harder to detect. When Charlie Francis was told about the positive test for stanozolol, his reaction wasn't guilt. It was confusion. The IOC lab report from Seoul, a 31-page document that was locked away for 30 years and only surfaced publicly in 2018 when the Toronto Star obtained a copy, is filled with anomalies. Handwritten revisions with no signatures, unexplained deletions, blank urine test fields, changed laboratory codes, and apparent confusion in the official documentation about which steroid was actually found in the sample. More troublingly, the stanozolol metabolites in Johnson's urine were pure. Stanozolol that a person has taken orally and processed will show up as a partially metabolized compound. What showed up in Johnson's sample looked more like pure stanozolol had been introduced directly into it. The IOC's medical commission withheld the full lab report from the Canadian team. Canada's chief medical officer formally requested the documentation and was denied. The Canadians were told to take the IOC's word for it. Johnson's defense team presented a 45-minute argument to the disciplinary committee. They introduced evidence that a member of Carl Lewis's entourage had been present in the doping control room after the race and could have had access to Johnson's sample. The appeal was denied in 45 minutes. The lab report remained sealed. Canada was devastated, and unlike the IOC, Canada actually wanted answers. The government established the Dubin inquiry in early 1989, led by Ontario Chief Justice Charles Dubin. It was broadcast live on national television. Canadians watched it the way they watched hockey playoffs. Johnson admitted to years of steroid use. His records were stripped. He was banned for 2 years. But the inquiry's most explosive testimony didn't come from Johnson. It came from Francis. Francis sat before the commission and methodically described a world in which elite sprinting at the highest international levels operated as an organized pharmacological enterprise. Steroids weren't the exception. They were the baseline. His argument was simple and devastating. We were not cheating more than anyone else. We were cheating the same amount as everyone else.
From an anonymous survey of athletes at the 2011 World Championships, 29% admitted to doping in the previous year.
Ben Johnson's crime was getting caught, and the evidence supported him. Carl Lewis had tested positive for 3 banned stimulants, pseudoephedrine, ephedrine, and phenylpropanolamine at the U.S. Olympic trials in July 1988, just 2 months before Seoul. The United States Olympic Committee accepted Lewis's explanation that the substances came from a herbal supplement and cleared him without sanction. He went to Seoul. He won the gold medal stripped from Johnson. He was celebrated as a clean champion. That decision was not made public until years later. Linford Christie, elevated to silver, had himself tested positive for pseudoephedrine at the Seoul Games. His appeal was accepted. He kept his medal and went on to win gold at the 1992 Barcelona Olympics. Dennis Mitchell, elevated to 4th, was later suspended for testosterone violations. Desai Williams, Johnson's Canadian teammate, was implicated in the same doping program Johnson had used. 6 of the 8 finalists, in the most watched 100 meters ever run, 6 of them. The IOC knew the sport had a problem. It had known for years. They'd watched the East German state doping program operate openly for decades, with athletes posting impossible performance improvements. They had testing programs that were widely understood by athletes and coaches to be catchable if you managed your timing correctly. The system wasn't designed to catch everyone. It was designed to catch someone occasionally as a demonstration of principle, while the sport continued generating the revenue and spectacle that made the Olympics financially viable.
I mean, you can do hundreds of thousands of tests and catch nobody if you don't want to catch anybody.
Is that what you think is happening, that people don't want it to work?
People don't want it to work.
Ben Johnson's coach was right about one thing. The rules were not the same for all. The United States Olympic Committee had the institutional weight and legal resources to contest a positive test. Canada did not. Johnson was Jamaican-born, had a stutter that made him less marketable, and didn't have the commercial infrastructure around him that protected Lewis. He was, in every structural sense, the most expendable person in that race. The IOC didn't need to conspire against Johnson. They just needed to apply the rules selectively, as they always had, and let the system do what systems do when they're built to protect themselves. Johnson returned from suspension in 1991. He never came close to his Seoul form again. He finished last in the 100-meter final at the 1992 Barcelona Olympics. In 1993, he tested positive for testosterone and was banned for life. He has spent the decades since Seoul alternating between anti-doping advocacy and continued insistence that he was set up. The sport moved on. The IOC moved on. The World Anti-Doping Agency wasn't established until 1999, 11 years after Seoul. WADA's creation was accelerated not by Johnson's scandal, but by the 1998 Tour de France Festina affair, which exposed institutional doping on a scale that could no longer be explained away. In the intervening decade, the IOC's approach to doping remained essentially unchanged. What happened in Seoul was managed, not addressed. Charlie Francis said it best, and said it on the record. What happened in Seoul wasn't an anomaly. It was Tuesday. Ben Johnson ran 100 meters in 9.79 seconds on September 24, 1988. No one has ever been formally credited with that time. No one has ever explained definitively how pure stanozolol ended up in his sample. No one has ever acknowledged that the man who received Johnson's gold medal had himself tested positive for banned substances weeks earlier. The cleanest performance at the 1988 Seoul Olympics may have been committed by a man who was cheating. The gold medal may have been awarded to a man who was also cheating. And the institution that governed both of them had every incentive to make sure only one of them paid. Ben Johnson was the fastest man alive for 72 hours. Whether anyone in that race was clean is a question history has never bothered to answer.